My name is Rodney, and I am a grateful, arrested alcoholic. And I know that I'm here only by the grace of a loving God, the help of you folks, and these sacred rooms that we call Alcoholics Anonymous. Calvin, thank you for putting the pressure on me. I can bring my handkerchief out now and start wiping the sweat. Allie, thank you for asking me to be in this seat. It is a responsibility to sit in this seat and talk about step 11. Huge responsibility. And I probably changed what I was going to talk about 20 times from 6 p.m. till I got here now. But I had a coach that said, speak from your heart and you'll never go wrong. I tried to put a lot of stuff in his head, but I'm going to try to bring a message that hopefully will disrupt the comfortable and bring some comfort to those that are disturbed. I want to thank all you that are here. For you newcomers who keep it green for me, welcome to the greatest show on earth. And for you folks that have been here for a while, old timers, whatever you want to call you, keeping the light on for a knucklehead like me who did not know he needed y'all. And that's a common theme. I did not know. But if you let me tell it, I knew everything. And I think my friend from Houston is here, and she says I was knowed up. I was a knowed up knucklehead. Didn't know my head from a hole in the ground until I walked in the basement and heard some folks talking about this thing called Alcoholics Anonymous and talking about God and laughing and showing me some things. So let me start off by kind of giving you some of my background and some of my story and what it was like, what happened, and how I got in the seat. So I'm in Albany, New York, by way of Baltimore, Maryland, the Wire. Grew up in Baltimore, went to school in Baltimore. My parents are still in Baltimore. I've got a son attending college down in Baltimore. So that's where I came from. The roots of my family is the Deep South, North Carolina. And I come from a family of sharecroppers. And for those who don't know what sharecroppers are, we lived on somebody's farm. Well, my parents lived on somebody's farm, and they tended to that farm. They lived in little shacks, little housing units, and they worked that farm. And part of their pay was that they were able to stay on that farm, live there, raise their families, and so it was very humble beginnings. And when I spent my time down there in the summertime, several things happened. My grandparents were always singing and humming. And I thought they were just talking, I thought they were just singing songs. But I came to know that they were praying and they were meditating. So I got a sense of that very early on. But also I got a sense of some other stuff, some things that came in some green and some brown bottles and made people happy and brought about some stories. And that was some of the things that I chased as a kid, right? So growing up in my household in Baltimore, I had both of those extremes, right? So I had a praying mom. I had a mom that made sure that I was in church, a holiness Pentecostal, hellfire brimstone, speaking in tongues, spinning around, dancing around church, a Bible thumping church. So I grew up with what we called the Word of God. It was heaven or hell, and there was nothing in between. It was heaven and hell and nothing in between. It was salvation by the blood of Jesus Christ. That's what I came up in. That's what I was raised in. And Mama made sure me and my younger brother were there. Now, on the other side of the fence, I had my dad. And my dad was a paint, a vodka toting, getting drunk, talking smack, not coming home, not paying the bills kind of a dad. I never saw my dad drink from a cup. My dad always drank from that bottle. Never seen him chase it. It was straight from the bottle. And didn't matter if he was sitting at home, didn't matter if he was at a stoplight, did not matter. That man drank vodka straight to the head. And he had some cousins that rolled with him. And again, I was attracted to some of that. I was attracted to some of that. So I'm living in this household with these two extremes: arguments, lights not on, bills ain't paid, mom hustling, trying to get everything taken care of and keep that stuff away from us. And I said I didn't want my household to be like that when I got older. Didn't want it to be like that, as I got older. So I was able to grow up and stay out of trouble for the most part. And age 14, I came across this stuff. Me and some friends pulled some shekels together, went down to the corner bar, got somebody to cop for us, and they got us some alcohol. And things started to change for me. I created some new dances. I kept talking and doing some crazy things at this one party we went to. And every weekend in high school, that's what it was about, and we called it getting nice. We get nice tonight, and we pull our money together. And then sometimes we could go in and get it ourselves, right? And I continued that through college, through high school, through college, and I was blessed enough to get a college scholarship for playing football, and it was on and popping. And see, the thing we didn't talk about while we were hanging out on the corners, I don't know about where y'all from and what y'all talked about, but see, we didn't talk about this here allergy. And we didn't talk about, while we're on the corners, we didn't talk about an obsession and compulsion. And we didn't talk about spiritual maladies. I heard about a spiritual malady in church, but they said if I didn't get saved, I was going to die and go to hell. So that's what I heard. So I will keep emphasizing that, because that's going to be a part of my 11 step stuff that I'll talk about tonight. That religious background that I grew up in. And see, when I got to college, I had this thing, but I didn't know I had it. And the thing is that when I started drinking, I got thirsty. And I didn't know that. And I thought that's what I was supposed to do, because there were some guys on the football team that did the same thing. They did the same thing. We drank to oblivion. And see, I'm not the guy who drank every day. I would have a hangover. That hangover would last about 2 or 3 days. I can't recall in my drinking moments that I drank any 2 days back to back, especially if I tied one on. So I drank heavily through college. I get out of college. Was blessed enough to play some football after college and start a career and have a family. But guess what? I still had that thing. Didn't know about it. My father went to treatment. He used to go to AA meetings. He would come home with these cards that he had to get signed, but never really sat me down and really never talked to me about it. So I knew nothing about AA, absolutely nothing, other than what I saw in the movies and on TV shows. And when people would make jokes about saying, hey, my name is so-and-so and I'm an alcoholic. That's all I knew. So I run through life, start a family up here in Albany, and I'm in a career, and I still got this thing, which I did not know about. And see, I have the allergy. I have the allergy. And see, when I was in college and I would drink, and sometimes I would drink wine coolers, and I would drink what they call these little fruity drinks, or these little frou-frou drinks. And people would look at me, dude, as big as you are, that's what you're drinking? And I would say, yeah, it had alcohol in it, didn't it? And that's why I drank it. I didn't know how alcohol really affected me. And I always drank to get drunk. I didn't drink to take the edge off. I drank to put the edge on. I didn't drink because I was black, because I was fat, because we were poor, or my parents didn't tell me they loved me. I drank for one reason, for the effect. I drank for the effect. I drank to get nice, and that was it. So that's just a little bit about what it was like. What happened? I am a school administrator in an all-boys school, charter school up here in Albany. And most of the boys in this school, they look like me. They come from my neighborhood, and we have similar backgrounds. And I'm one of the school administrators. And, this book that we talk about talks about that our disease is progressive in nature, that it's cunning, baffling, and powerful. We come to graduation night in 2013, and as an administrator, I'm a part of the presentation. We leave school early that day, and the principal gives us some time off so we can go relax, get our hair, get our nails did, come back, and let's put a show on for these kids and their families. And some of these boys are some of the first ones to graduate in their families. What does this alcoholic do? Just to let you know who I am, I'm a liar. I'm a cheat, and I'm a liar, and I'm a cheat. That's what I do. So I go out, go have some fun. I'm with somebody I shouldn't have been with, doing some things I shouldn't have done, and I had a couple drinks. Nothing happens, right? So I'm able to get to that graduation. I'm able to put a cap and a gown on. I'm able to get on stage, and I'm the one to call the students up to get their diplomas. Okay, that's 2013, progressive nature of our disease. 2014, same thing happens. Take some time off before the graduation starts. I call the same individual. We get together, we hook up, and I start drinking again. I took the first drink, and that first drink asked for a second. That second one demanded a third one. The fourth one, that third one said, you got to have a fifth one. I got to the sixth one, and I wanted that sixth one just as much as I wanted that first one. And before I knew it, I was blacked out, gone, had no idea where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. I became such a pain in the butt. The individual I was with drove me down to the graduation. The graduation is one of the biggest college campuses in the state of New York. You can barely find your way around on that campus if you're sober. Somehow I found my way to the graduation. I found the cap and gown. I found my way on stage. Keep in mind, I am done, toasted, blacked out, done on stage. And I'm the one supposed to call the students up. Now, before I even get there, everybody's calling me. Everybody's texting me. Where are you? What's going on? The show, all this stuff. Now, on the top of page 18 of our book, of our big book, it talks about what we do to those in our lives, how we show up in their lives. And it used a very descriptive word. It says the annihilation of all things worthwhile in life. It talks about blameless children and sad wives. In that one instant, that one night, I did it all. Because there was a young lady sitting in that audience, and she had everybody looking back at her. Dude, where is he? What's going on? Can't you call him? Is he okay? Help a brother out, right? And she knew what the deal was. She knew what was going on. Total annihilation of who she was as a person that one night. I get off that stage. The graduation goes off without a hitch. Thankfully. You want to talk about God's grace? Social media ain't what it is today. I didn't act a fool. We were able to get through the graduation, and all the families were happy. The principal comes to me, gets me off the stage, takes me out, pours me into my then girlfriend's car, and we make it home. I realize what happens, and I flip out. My career is over, my life is over, and so on and so forth. Needless to say, the board chair gave me two options: resign or be fired. And after he told me that, the last thing he said was, hey, listen, what you're about to go through will be difficult, but if you do it, your life will get better. Had no idea what that fool was talking about because he just fired me. And here he is going to try to give me some Father knows best advice. Dude, really? But he was right. He knew something. That guy knew something that I didn't know. He knew that at some point in time, I was going to walk into the rooms of Alcoholics Anonymous. And I was going to be able to take the cotton out of my ears and put it in my mouth. And I was going to hear something that would revolutionize my life. Didn't even know it. Had no idea. So I found my way through you guys through an IOP program. They said, go to the rooms. I'm a know-it-all. I'm like, dude, why do I need to go to the rooms? I'm not homeless. I got a house. Why do I need to go to the rooms? Didn't know what the rooms were. Didn't know what I didn't know. First time I ever listened in my life. And I found you guys. I walked in that room and I was attracted to something. And those guys said, hey, if you want what we have, do what we did. They put a big book in my hand, a 12 and 12, not a big book in my hand. They put a 12 and 12, a living sober and came to believe. And they said, we'll see you at 7 o'clock in the morning on Saturday. We'll go do some step work and then you'll go to the 8 o'clock meeting. And I did that for the first several months of my AA life. And see, I thought you guys were a little crazy. And here's why. I talked about this holiness Pentecostal background I got. Do you know y'all cuss in churches? Do you know you smoke on church grounds? Because some of y'all, some of y'all talk about you don't like God. So I'm sitting in this meeting, I'm looking for lightning to come striking down because the F-bombs are flying in the church and all this stuff. I'm like, what in the world have I gotten into? But here's the magic. You all kept saying, keep coming back. And I kept coming back, and I've learned about love and tolerance. Everybody ain't been through what I've been through. They haven't experienced what I've experienced. I talked about my elders and how they would be singing, right? So I grew up with this feel of gratitude and blessings and a God. My family went through some tough times just trying to survive and live day to day. So they were always singing and praying and worshiping God. It was a big part of our lives. So I came in here with that in my head and knew that stuff. Actually, I knew so much of that, I kind of leapfrogged steps 2 and 3 and only realized that by going to keep coming back. Never Too Early Big Book study told me, guess what, dude, you ain't doing a second step. So I had to go back and acknowledge, that's what I had to come to believe. I didn't have to know that God, I had to come to believe. That's a process. I had to learn some things. And I didn't necessarily, as we were just read, as was just read, I've got to be open, I've got to be willing, I've got to be honest. I had to be open to this thing, and I kept coming back, and I remained honest, and I remained open, right? And I found out some things about a God, a higher power that I never thought I would know. And only because I kept coming back. And I stayed in this process. And for me, that kind of moves us in, or moves me into step 11. Right? Now, here's the thing. Step 11 ain't step 1. So just walking through the door, I'm not going to understand step 11. And thankfully, I work with some folks that say, hey, listen, just focus on the step you're on. You'll get to step 11, you'll get to step 9, you'll get to step 4 when you get to them. And I want to thank this program for step 4, because I talked about my life being revolutionized, and it was because of step 4. Step 4 got me to see who I was and how I showed up in the lives of people around me. And it was not pretty. It was not a pretty picture. Because, see, I thought I was the male version of Sister Teresa. I volunteered all over the place, coached all the kids' games and this stuff, opening doors and doing dishes and all those different things, right? And here I am, the sun goes down, the moon comes up, and guess what? I'm on top of the house barking at the moon. And that's before I take a drink of alcohol. So you know what's going to happen after that. It's on and popping. So I get to you guys, and you start talking about these steps, and you start talking all this God stuff, God this and God that. And then some folks didn't want to say God. They had to say higher power. And I'm like, dude, why are you saying higher power? God is 3 letters. It's short. Just say God. I didn't know what I didn't know. I kept coming back, and y'all kept telling me what the deal was. And, I did that 4th step. And for me, the 4th step opens the doors for everything. If I don't do a 4th step, I ain't doing a 5th step. I ain't sitting down with somebody I don't know, don't look like me, didn't come from where I came from. And I'm going to tell him everything I did. I'm going to tell you about how I was so bad in my marriage, cheating in my marriage and lying. I'm not going to do that. If I don't do a 5th step, I ain't doing a 9th step, a 4th step. If by me doing the 4th step, I put all that stuff out there so I could walk to somebody, even my enemies, and say, hey, listen, this is who I am. This is what I did. I'm sorry for that. How do I make it better? Ain't happening. And I'm not going to review my day if I don't do a 4th step. 4th step opened the doors for some compassion. 6th step gave me some humility. 9th step helped me to be kind of equal and level set with everybody. Because that night that I drank and got on that stage blacked out, I didn't want to be in society. I stayed in the basement for a week. And if I went outside, I was playing frog and hiding behind a telephone pole and cars and making sure people didn't see me. 4-step gave me that freedom. Cleared the channel because I was blocked from the sunlight of the Spirit. You know, St. Francis prayer talks about in the 11th step. Make me a channel. That channel has to be cleared. I can't be a channel if that channel's cleared up, it is blocked up. I've got to clear that channel out. That channel has to be cleared out. Has to be cleared out. So I chose as a topic in the 12 and 12 at the bottom of page 98. And it reads, the actual experience of meditation and prayer across centuries is, of course, immense. The world's libraries and places of worship are a treasure trove of all seekers. It is to be hoped that every AA who has a religious connection with which emphasizes meditation will return to the practice of that devotion as never before. Right? So I chose that piece because I walked in here with a knowledge of a God. I had a knowledge of some spiritual principles. And when I read that piece, that let me know that I could continue in that. And this was going to enhance, or as we hear in the big book, enlarge my spiritual life. And really that word practice, right? Practice, right? So the first word in the 11th step says sought. And when I see that word, it's an active word. It's a word that says work for me. And I told, as I mentioned, I'm a football player, and practice is huge when you play a sport. You have to practice consistently. And in that practice, you build some muscle memory, which means you're not thinking as much. You're able to react to what's happening in front of you. You're thinking about situations and you're working on those situations so that you can react fluidly. Most successful athletes are successful at a high level because of what they can do between their ears. The work they put in to be successful between their ears is just as much as the work that they do physically. But it's practice. Most folks don't see the practice that it takes to be successful on a football field or an athletic field. And for us that's in AA or us that have a spiritual life, most people don't see the practice that we have. And oftentimes we see people say, oh, I wish my spiritual life could be like them. Oh, he or she's a spiritual giant. You ever wonder how they got there? This right here tells it. The step itself says sought. Sought what? Seeking what? Sought to improve our spiritual, our conscious contact with God. How do we do that? Through prayer and meditation. So I went through steps 1 through 9, and I get to 10, 11, and 12. It's practice. I like to call them the practice steps. Some people call them the maintenance steps, and I call them the practice steps because it's something I'm never going to perfect. It's something that I've got to keep working at to get better, but I'll never perfect it. I'll never be able to perfect that. But I can definitely grow, and I can definitely enlarge my spiritual life. You know, back in the big book on page 35, Bill talked about our friend Jim. He said Jim failed to enlarge his spiritual life. What happened to Jim? Jim had a successful business, things was going well, the business was taking care of him, and he couldn't put it down. Couldn't put it down. And they talked about he was not able to enlarge his spiritual life. How do I enlarge my spiritual life? Prayer and meditation. Through prayer and meditation. And for me, and I can only tell you my experience. My experience. Now, am I a prayer warrior? No. Do I meditate day and night? No. I am practicing it. I am now practicing a lot of meditation. I started working with a guy, and he sends me things to take a look at, some guided meditation. And I'm getting into this meditation thing. Practice. What do you have to do? You have to make room. I have to make room for practice. My morning routine was to get up, work out, have a meeting on, and do those things. And I started working with this guy. He said, you got to start talking with God first thing in the morning, Jim. That's what you got to do. And he said, you need to get on your knees. You need to get on your knees. It was not a practice for me to do that. Guess what I do now? Before I get on meetings, before I put my clothes on to work out, I am now praying, intently praying, and I'm going through meditation. I'm not perfect at it. And I'm resting, I'm relaxing, and I'm working on this practice. I'm working on this practice. You know, in doing the steps, we talk about, you know, our relationship ideals. And we may talk about a spiritual or a God ideal. I've done the same thing when it comes to prayer and meditation. What's my ideal? What's my expectation? What am I seeking? What am I looking for? What am I trying to do? It says right here in the 11th step, I'm trying to improve my conscious contact with God through prayer and meditation. I'm trying to be able to listen to God. I'm trying to slow down and relax, because I can go from 6 a.m., 5:30 in the morning until 12, 1 o'clock at night. So I'm taking that time to slow down. I'm taking that time to relax. Give myself to my higher power. And of course, throughout the day, doing the same thing. Thinking and meditating throughout the day. Asking God to direct my thinking. Have it being void of self-seeking, of dishonesty, of fears and anxiety. Before I even start the day. Open myself up so that I can be a vessel, so I can be the channel. So I can be a channel. All that stuff is important. On page 98 of the 12 and the 12, it says something that's very, very important. It says, there is a direct linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Self-examination, step 4. Step 4. All this stuff we do is connected. Step 4. I've learned how to self-examine myself, and self-examining myself in the point of how am I showing up in the lives of other people. I also use that in my A step. How did I show up in the lives of those around me? How did I cause them harm? And that helped me to develop my 9-step list, my 8-step list, and who I need to do amends to. So there's a direct link between linkage among self-examination, meditation, and prayer. Taken separately, these practices can bring much relief and benefit. In the big book, Bill talked about fourth dimension experience. How do I get a fourth dimension experience? I need to link self-examination, meditation, and prayer. But when they are logically related and interwoven, put together, the result is unshakable foundation for life. I want an unshakable foundation for life. How do I get that? I examine myself. We even talk about that in the 10th step. Review my day, self-examination. Doing some inventory list, self-examination. Why am I disturbed? Self-examination. And then some meditation and prayer. Meditation and prayer. It says, now and then we may be granted a glimpse of that ultimate reality, which is God's kingdom. And we will be comforted and assured that our own destiny in the realm will be secure for so long as we try, however falteringly, to find and do the will of our Creator. So long we try. I am not perfect, as I said, at doing meditation. It's going to take me a long while because I'm thinking about my day. I'm thinking about what happened. I'm doing all these things when I need to quiet my mind, but I'm getting better at it. We got to try. Progress, not perfection. We talk about that all the time. And it has to be interwoven throughout all that we do in this program. It has to be interwoven with everything we do in this program. And that's important. That's very, very important. And we say, stop beating ourselves with the baseball bat, put a feather in our hands. Beat yourself with a feather. Take it easy and practice. We get better with practice. We get better with practice. It's all important. With that self-examination, it says, as we have seen, self-searching in the means by which we bring new vision, action, and grace to bear upon the dark and negative side of our natures. So we go through a 4-step and we see the dark sides of our nature. But we continue in the process and we begin to have a new vision, action, and grace. Where would this knucklehead be without grace? I have no idea where I would be without grace. Because see, y'all, I didn't know. I didn't come in here running from the fire. The gorilla was not on my back. I was not homeless. I was not facing a lot of consequences, nor did I experience a lot of consequences. And it's only by God's grace that I got here and have not looked to take another drink. Now, sometimes a drink looks good. So what do I have to do? I have to keep coming in here. I've got to keep self-searching. And I got to listen to what y'all say. I got to listen to what y'all say. That's part of what it's like for me now. I'm chasing this thing. See, God could and would if he was sought. That's work. I can't seek by sitting on my behind. I can't sought through prayer and meditation by sitting on my behind. I've got to do something. I've got to get into this literature. I've got to listen to people that's talking the solution, not just the problem of our alcoholism. That's just me. That's what I need. And that's what I found through the pandemic. Thank you, Alan. That's what I found through this pandemic. And that's why I'm here now. I sought. When the pandemic hit, I was hearing a lot of things about, people boohoo and worried about having contact with people, and I need to do this and I need to do that. I went seeking, man. I didn't know anything about Zoom. I figured Zoom out and I started connecting the dots. And all of a sudden, it was this guy up in Toronto, and he had, the Ramers on here, and he had Teresa, and he had said Ralph. I'm like, who is this dude and where did he come from? And I came all the way in and I sat all the way down and cannot let this thing go. Have not been able to let it go because I saw it. Because I saw it. You're having a problem with the 11 steps. Just look at the first word. Just seek. Seek to have a conscious contact. Get into a practice. And we get better with practice. We get better with practice. Does not matter. We get better with practice. We develop muscle memory. We know how to react when situations happen. We learn to pause. And how do you learn how to pause? You start pausing one day. And you get better at it. How do I learn to pray? What do I pray? There's tons of instructions here, y'all. There's tons of instructions here. Tons of instructions. And before I end, I'll save that for later. But practice. Starting out at a point and getting better. Seeking, sought, information, processes. And you find out what works best for you. Find out what works best for you. When I do meditation, it's best for me laying down flat because it's early in the morning and sometimes I'm still tired and I just lay down flat. And that's what I do. I haven't fallen asleep yet. Haven't fallen asleep yet. And before I do that, I just pray. I thank my higher power for another day. And I ask my higher power, give me the understanding and give me the strength to do thy will. But first of all, I got to ask, what is your will? And I get that sometimes by going through that meditation piece and the power to carry that out. Let me end my portion here. Last paragraph in the 12 and 12 in step 11. It says perhaps. So if we're doing all these things and there's no reward, why are we doing it? If I can't get to a point of being happy joyous and free, why am I doing it? If I can't have peace, why am I doing it? Here's some of the results of trying the 12 step. Perhaps one of the greatest rewards of meditation and prayer is the sense of belonging. How many of us didn't feel like we belonged before we got into this peace that comes to us? We no longer live in a completely hostile world. We no longer live in a completely hostile world. We are no longer lost and frightened and purposeless. We have a purpose. The moment we catch even a glimpse of God's will, that's one of those hits, one of those God hits. The moment we begin to see truth, justice, and love as the real and eternal things in life, we are no longer deeply disturbed by all the seeming evidence to the contrary that surrounds us in purely human affairs. We know that God lovingly watches over us. We know that when we turn to him, all will be well with us here and thereafter. My name is Rodney. I'm an arrested, grateful alcoholic, and I will stay. Thank you very much for everybody that's here. Thank you, Allie, for inviting me, for everybody behind the scenes. Peace and love, folks.